The first sign usually isn't a fight. It's geography, and your dog takes the middle of the hallway. Your cat starts avoiding the hallway entirely, and most people never notice the shift because it happens slowly. One day the cat stops sitting on the couch, and a week later they're eating faster. Then suddenly they're spending half the day on top of the refrigerator. Everyone in the house says the same thing. Yeah, they just don't really get along. But after spending years watching how cats and dogs share space, I don't think most of these homes actually have an animal relationship problem. I think they have an architecture problem, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. A while back, I visited a home with a big golden retriever named Murphy and a gray cat named Olive. The owners told me Olive had become antisocial. She hid constantly, wouldn't come downstairs, and hissed anytime Murphy walked by. But the strange thing was this: Murphy wasn't aggressive at all. Friendly dog with loose body language. No resource guarding, no lunging, and he barely paid attention to the cat. Yet Olive behaved like she was living in enemy territory. Then I stood in the middle of their living room and noticed something almost embarrassingly simple. Every route out of the room required touching the floor. The couch sat too far from the shelves. The cat tree was shoved into a dead corner, and the dining chairs were tucked in tightly. There was nowhere to move continuously above ground level. To us, it looked like a perfectly normal living room. To Olive, it was a series of isolated islands surrounded by open water. And Murphy, without doing anything wrong, controlled the ocean. That's the part I think people misunderstand about cats and dogs. Dogs tend to occupy space directly, while cats tend to evaluate space strategically. A dog can relax in the center of a room because the room itself feels accessible. A cat relaxes when the room feels navigable. Escape routes, visibility, height, and predictability matter, especially in shared territory. And once you understand that, you start realizing something uncomfortable. Your pets may not be fighting each other. They may be fighting the layout of your home. So before you buy another gate, another training spray, or another expensive calming gadget, try looking at your home from knee height instead of eye level. You'll notice things immediately. Long, narrow hallways, blind corners, and food bowls placed at traffic intersections. Dead ends behind furniture and places where one animal constantly has to pass directly through the other's movement pattern. Most multi-pension builds in these tiny repeated moments. Not dramatic attacks, not chaos, just low-level stress accumulating over time. And honestly, the biggest mistake I see is people treating separation as the final goal. Sometimes temporary separation is absolutely necessary, especially if there's real aggression involved. But in mild to moderate tension cases, permanent barriers can accidentally keep both animals in a constant state of alert. They can smell each other, hear each other, and track movement under the door. But they never learn how to comfortably exist within the same mapped environment. So instead of thinking, how do I keep them apart? A better question is, how do I make this room feel readable to both of them? That shift changes everything. One thing I often recommend is creating what I think of as continuous movement paths for the cat. Maybe the back of the couch connects to a side table, the side table connects to a low shelf, and the shelf connects to a windowsill or cabinet surface. What matters isn't the furniture itself. What matters is that the cat no longer feels trapped after jumping up. I've seen cats completely ignore a tall, expensive cat tower and instead choose the top of a cheap bookshelf. This choice is simply because the bookshelf gave them two visible exit options. This detail matters more than people realize. And once a cat starts feeling like they have options instead of dead ends, their entire behavior can begin to change. And here's something else that's easy to miss. Direct staring is exhausting for cats, especially from dogs. A dog lying quietly on the floor may look harmless to you, but if the cat has to remain within that dog's uninterrupted line of sight for hours every day, the room never fully stops feeling tense. Sometimes moving one chair 6 inches changes that entire dynamic. I'm serious. I once watched a household improve simply because we rotated an armchair enough to break the visual corridor between the hallway and the kitchen entrance. The cat stopped getting visually pinned every time she crossed the room. Within days, she started coming downstairs again. No new products. No punishment. No complicated training system, just different spatial pressure. And personally, I think modern homes unintentionally favor dogs. Wide open layouts, huge empty floor areas, very little vertical layering. From a human design perspective, open concept homes feel clean and spacious. From a cat's perspective, some of them feel psychologically exposed. That's why you see cats inventing elevation whenever possible. Top of the fridge, top of doors, bookshelves, laundry machines. People sometimes interpret this as weird behavior. Most of the time, it's adaptation. The cat is solving a spatial problem the room hasn't solved for them. Now, none of this means your dog is bad, and it doesn't mean your cat is fragile. It just means both animals experience territory differently. Dogs often gain confidence through access. Cats often gain confidence through options. Once you understand that, a lot of behavior starts making sense. The staring, the ambushing, the sudden sprinting, the hiding, the tension around corners. It's often less about hatred and more about uncertainty. And uncertainty is exhausting for animals. Honestly, one of the biggest mindset changes for me was realizing that animals don't experience a home the way humans do. We see furniture. They see movement pathways, exposure, ownership, pressure, escape probability. They're constantly reading the environment, even when they look relaxed. Which means your layout is communicating something to them all day long, whether you realize it or not. So tonight, before you go to bed, try one experiment. Sit on the floor for 5 minutes. Not on the couch, not standing, on the floor. Look at the room from your cat's perspective. Can they cross the room without getting cornered? Can they pause somewhere elevated halfway through? Can they leave a space in more than one direction? Can they observe the dog without being directly exposed? You might notice problems you've walked past for years. And the interesting part is this. Sometimes peace between animals doesn't start with training. Sometimes it starts with moving a chair,